Hey, what is up? Welcome to this episode of the Wantrepreneur to Entrepreneur Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Brian Lofermento, and I'm so excited for today's guest because he has been an entrepreneur for quite some time now. He has so much experience in all different facets of business and entrepreneurship, and he's really going to open our eyes to so many different components that go into running and growing successful businesses. So let me tell you all about today's guest. His name is Topher Deutschman. Topher is an experienced owner, leader, and strategist. He's a lifelong entrepreneur that's launched, bought, built, managed, and sold businesses, everything from his first lemonade stand, a college side hustle e-commerce business, 2 restaurants, a wine and spirits distribution company, and now Jombine, which is a recruiting platform that he's going to share so many insights with us about here today. His expertise and focus in organizational behavior, culture, team development, talent management, business development, and corporate strategy. He has his Bachelor of Science degree in Industrial and Labor Relations from Cornell University. So he's a wicked smart guy, as we say in Boston. One thing that I absolutely love about him, we're going to talk about culture today, is he specifically wrote ahead of our interview here today, he said, culture isn't about having a foosball table in the break room or casual Fridays. It's so much deeper than that. So that's a little teaser. We're going to learn so much today. I'm not going to say anything else. Let's dive straight into my interview with Topher Deutschman. All right, Topher, I am honestly so excited that you're here today. Welcome to the show.
Brian, it is great to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Heck yeah. I tease listeners a little bit. I don't even know all the brilliance I'm going to get to extract from you here today. But first things first, take us beyond the bio. Who the heck is Topher? How'd you get into all these amazing things that you've done?
Well, Brian, I really appreciate that. I really appreciate this format to helping entrepreneurs. I've been one of those lifelong entrepreneurs, right? As a kid, the cool thing though, Brian, is I feel like my story is just getting started, right? So starting from, being a lifelong entrepreneur, that kid that had the lemonade stand, that even turned it into like this hilarious bodega that I wanted to upsell even more than just lemonade. So, we're talking everything from cookies to CDs to electronics. I had the whole neighborhood out there kind of helping. I'm also the guy, as you said, right, that started the college e-commerce business just for some beer money, right? But really, I feel like a lot of my journey and kind of understanding of business started in college with my degree in industrial and labor relations. And the basis of organizational behavior, labor dynamics, HR, just the understanding of people in the side of business being so much more than just a product and finding ways of marketing and copywriting. Truly, we're here in the workplace. We spend a third of our lives working. So how do those dynamics work? And so after a start in the corporate world, my wife and I, we were crazy. We said, hey, let's buy a restaurant. We found a local neighborhood restaurant right down the street. And right before the 2008 economy crash, we said, hey, let's buy this restaurant and make a go at it. And man, do we learn a lot during those days. And we ended up being like one of the top foodie restaurants in Boulder County. It led to us opening a second restaurant down in Denver, Colorado. And then I learned the valuable lesson of having to close my first business, which is part of the gig and part of, I think, learning from our failures. But really, it was after exiting that first restaurant and selling, I started a company called Blue Sky, which we grew over 6 years and exited in 2017. And this is really where I really honed in building a business around culture and around people. It's also, funny enough, actually where I first came up with the idea of Jombine all the way back in 2015. And I use the concept of Jombine, what it is today, what I'm excited to tell everybody listening about is how to really structure our business lives around these sort of important culture pieces. And so that leads to today. After COVID, I kind of pulled Jombine off the shelf, and today we run Jombine. It's a recruiting platform and hiring ecosystem that's all about trying to fix the way we hire just for the betterment of our workplaces. And Jombine, it's really built like the NFL Combine. So job plus combine equals Jombine. But instead of making our candidates run like a 40-yard dash, we put them through this full evaluation program, which consists of deep dive profiles and our workplace DNA, assessments, video interviews, references, and more. And then in addition, our platform is backed by our agents, which is kind of like our version of recruiters. And today our agents, myself included, I'm my own agent, support companies and candidates through a host of competitive differentiations compared to how typical recruiters operate. But it's all in the heart of improving how the workplace hires and get hired. We're essentially, to kind of coin, we're like the Remax of recruiters, or as my awesome daughter put it, I'm an entrepreneur helping other entrepreneurs. So hopefully that gives a good background for you, Brian.
Yeah, I love that, Topher. It actually gives us so many places to launch from. But first and foremost, what I really want to get into, you talked about, I love that illustration. I'm a visual person. So when you talk about the NFL Combine, I can picture that, putting people through their paces and actually deciding, hey, here's the traits that we all look for. Obviously, we've heard the stories of the Tom Brady's of the world being overlooked because of those combines, which obviously speaks to so many intangibles that also go along with success. And Topher, I'm using all of this as a big transition to talk about one of your intangibles as an entrepreneur. I can recognize it when I see it, and that is you are a hustler. I mean, starting so young, and it's something I obviously relate to, is you and I both started our first businesses when we were in college, and it's that hustler mentality that I think somewhere along the way, Topher, you and I were wired a bit weird, where we never worried about the how. We just worried about the what, and we knew we'd always figure it out with that in mind. Talk to us about that, because hearing your journey, obviously, and you've heard some episodes, it's never a linear path for any entrepreneur. Walk us through what's at the root of that mindset where you've just said, you know what, I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I know I'm going to figure it out.
Brian, that's such an interesting question, such a good question. I've thought about this a lot. I've read a ton of books to try to understand me, right? Like just my own DNA. Like, why am I wired this way? I mean, both my parents are entrepreneurs. My mom and dad both had businesses. So I grew up in that environment. And at the same time, I've had a lot of mentors on the other side. My father-in-law is this amazing mentor as well. But he was a John Deere employee, becoming executive for 40 years, right? So kind of seeing both sides and how that business works, I think you put it in the right way. Like, we're wired a little bit with kind of that crazy gene, right? Of how do we go out and maybe start something on our own as a builder. I remember all the way back in elementary school, I can remember this as 9, 10 years old, maybe even prior. Teacher asked, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I said I wanted to be an inventor. But I was never that sort of person that knew how to build or take something apart and rebuild it together. But I realized that's entrepreneurship, right? It's inventing. It's today. And I also, I have to give a shout out to like even my business partner. So big shout out to Jordan here, and who's coming along this whole journey with me with Jombine. It's really aligning to the sort of journey of invention and then bringing people along that can also help invent as part of the process. And so that could be a marketing material. That could be, we developed like literally this whole Jombine platform from scratch just as an idea. It's literally started as a napkin sketch and how do you build it, right? That's, to me, that's inventing. And I think that that's a big piece of maybe what's come out of those sort of crazy genes that have marked my entrepreneurship over the years.
Yeah, I love the way that you answered that. And especially because, yeah, you're right. You've said the word DNA a few times already in our conversation today. And I think that it genuinely is for us. And that's why for all of you crazy Wantrepreneur to Entrepreneur listeners in over 150 countries, it's in our DNA. We can't ignore it, which is why if you have that feeling, it's something that can't just simply be stopped. We will probably never be happy if we ever have a 9-to-5 job. And it's because it is so at the root of what we believe in. It's not merely that we do it for the money. Gosh, there's a lot of things that we could do for the money that are probably a lot easier than the path that we've all chosen. But it really is at that molecular level that this is what we're meant to do. And Topher, I've never talked about this on the air. I think that you're the perfect guest for us to have this conversation in front of everybody here today. But I've always believed that every venture that we pivot to and transition to, it actually reveals the biggest things from what we've learned up to that point. So just like you know, I went from a soccer blog to a marketing agency to consulting agencies to a book to a podcast to retreats to all of these things. And it's funny for me because people always say, well, those things don't fit together. And in my head, I'm like, no, my soccer blog taught me about marketing, which is when I started a marketing agency, and growing an agency and having a business partner and having clients taught me about actual business structure. So all of these things led to the next, and it's really the building blocks that have got me to where I am today, which Topher, for your journey, I think it's fascinating when I look at, you know, e-commerce business to restaurants to a distribution company to now Jombine. In my head, I'm just like, there's something about people and there's something about recruiting and hiring and building a team culture that was pervasive in all of your prior endeavors that led you to here. Talk to us about that, what seems like a natural evolution. I know it didn't feel natural in those moments, but talk to us about why that's the thing that stood out after all these ventures.
Yeah, that's great. So this is something I actually help candidates and coach our candidates with, is understanding their story arc and as writing a story, right? And I think that we all have kind of these, like one of my favorite books is The Odyssey, and how that story evolves and how crazy it is from adventure to adventure, but it all is tied together to a journey. And I think that's part of what we need to understand when we're finding the right company, right? Or when we're choosing what our workplace purpose is, or heck, even when if I want to be an entrepreneur, I want to own my own business, well, what industry should I go into? And there was a big realization later on in my life, actually, I mean, not even that long ago, we're talking a couple years, where I really transitioned from understanding myself through my passions versus my purpose. And I feel like that was one of the big things that I was missing early on in my career as I was navigating my entrepreneurial journey. Was I was chasing a lot of passions, right? I was chasing the things that I thought would be fulfilling in terms of what would happen in the workplace. And I can, you know, there's a big story behind that with just kind of family and some health struggles with people in my family, you know, dealing with, we're a family of workaholics. We love to work. We love to create. We love to invent, right? We love to build and work our tails off. So, you know, you'd think like, oh, starting a restaurant or starting a really cool boutique wine and spirits distribution company, like there's so much fun and kind of, you know, hip and coolness around it. And then that was all the feedback that I would get. And I think what I realized is that, you know, we can turn our passions into something we don't like if it becomes work, right? And so it's really aligning to those purposeful pieces. So just to kind of sum it up, it was really understanding, it's like, what are my gifts to the world versus the gifts to me, you know, the gifts given to me from the world. And that was really understanding that I had this deep passion from my education that I could apply to my everyday. And that was understanding people and getting to know people, managing and hiring and built around the idea of just everyone rowing in the same direction, you know, and being that powerful team. I'm a big sports guy. I played lacrosse and football in college, and I've been coaching out here for like 20 years. And I just love the sort of team aspect, right? You don't have to have all star players. You have to have a really strong, cohesive team. So to me, like that was threaded, Brian, for my whole career, and really helped define this next stage of my career journey. It's like, that's the story that it tells is how do I take all of these things that are purposeful in my life, that I could even call like my kingdom purpose of why I'm here. What makes me tick? I'm willing to work my tail off, but what's going to wake me up in the morning and get me excited, right? And it's going to drive me to want to create more, invent more, but also deal with the crud that happens in entrepreneurship, right? The tough times, the failures that you have to overcome, just the grittiness that it takes, the resilience. And really it was that understanding of, for me, what was those common threads throughout my life. And it wasn't just chasing passions. It wasn't just that I just want time freedom or try to make more money, because I certainly kind of chose the wrong things by getting into restaurants and distribution. But I think I'm honing in on that now. And that's why I say, like, when my story is just getting started, I feel like this next level is going to be this beautiful story that really kind of tells that sort of purposeful journey in my entrepreneurship.
Yeah, gosh, Topher, I'm so grateful that you said that here in the air, because listeners, I want to call this out for all of you, is that Topher and I may sound like two old heads here talking about, more than a decade for each of us in doing our own entrepreneurial journeys, but it always feels like we're just starting out. Hearing you talk about this so openly, Topher, it's something that I resonate with and that I relate to, because I'm just like, I constantly feel like I'm evolving and then constantly re-evolving. So I love the fact that you called that out. And also, I think this is the first time I've actually ever heard someone openly make that differentiation between passion and purpose. And again, it relates with me so much of this, because I'm sure that we're similar in the fact that it's easy for us to get excited. I'm very easily excitable. It doesn't take much, especially because it's that one trait that you talked about. I'm so willing to do the work. If you tell me anything and get me excited about it, I'm willing to do the work. I'd love to hear you directly address it, because everyone talks about it so differently, and I don't think we talk about it openly enough, is that concept of, we hear the watered down advice of follow your passions. And you just showed us a real life anecdote about how you've navigated those waters. But talk to us for those listeners, because I'm sure a lot of them are saying, I've heard that advice before, but Topher, you're saying something different. It's not follow your passions. I think it's an even harder question of how the heck do we even figure out our purpose? How do we even approach that?
Brian, it's so hard. It's so hard. And could take a lifetime to figure that out. It's going to shift and transition. And again, I mean, this is not just for entrepreneurs. This is for anyone in life. And it dials back to the whole culture. Like, part of understanding what a company culture is also understanding what your personal culture is. And I think that really aligns well with the idea of our purpose. And when I say like kingdom purpose, it's like, why was I put on this earth? What can I contribute back to this world? And so often, and this is like one of my pet peeves, I try not to be negative, right? I love positivity, but one of my pet peeves is when I see a lot of sort of gurus online talking about, well, you can make a lot of money doing, Amazon dropship and those sort of things. And it doesn't even matter what you sell, you can navigate that sort of world. And to me, that seems like such a wasted opportunity of bright people and driven people. And yeah, sure, we can start businesses that we have no purpose behind it. We're just doing it to make money. But I feel like that's a big miss in our world today, in our entrepreneurial world. We have so many businesses that are founded by people that they just got in because, and they can't really attribute it to their why, right? And I've heard a lot of your previous guests talk about the importance of why, and even people like Simon Sinek, like just the idea of finding your why being so important. That's your culture, right? And you can get into a business just to make money, but are you going to be truly not just fulfilled yourself, but can fulfill others? And to me, that's the key in business. That's what's differentiated a lot of what my journey is, especially in this next stage with Jombine, is how can I give back to the world in a meaningful way? To me, isn't that like part of our legacy? And there were so many businesses, Brian, it sounds like you and I are very similar, that you kind of like, would I want to do that? Could I do that? Could I make money? Could it provide the lifestyle design that I want? But ultimately, I believe at least, we need to make sacrifices in our life that are truly supporting what that purpose is. And that to me is what the true legacy that we can give back to our kids, our community, our neighbors, and maybe even beyond.
Gosh, Topher, you're giving me chills here on the air, because I feel like so frequently in the world of entrepreneurship, we're told to build the life that we want. And I'll be honest with you, so much of our conversation here today, I'm literally getting chills up into my arms, is because I always reflect on the fact that I wish I could live my life that way. I genuinely do, Topher. I wish that I could wake up in the morning and only do things for me. However, there's something inside of me that I'm always driven by being of service to others. It's the only reason why I run a 5-day-a-week week podcast. And so there's a lot of work that goes behind that. And I think you just hit on the most important word that touches upon this topic, which is sacrifice. Yeah, could we live a very self-serving life? Of course we can, but we must sacrifice some of what we want to be of service to others. And I think that ultimately that's the stuff that really lights me up. And so you could come full circle and say that it's actually selfish in the end and it's self-serving in the end, because that is the very stuff. Serving others is what gets me out of bed in the morning. So I love the fact that you're illuminating all of these things from such a place of experience and wisdom. And along those lines, I really enjoy the way that you disregard a lot of kind of the fluffy advice and the fluffy stuff that a lot of people say in the world of entrepreneurship, specifically regarding, I'm so excited to go here with you, culture. You've called it out. All of our listeners know we ask our guests for their zone of genius. Topher, you were a harsh critic. You said you cut through the BS of vision statements and bland values, and you really get at the root of what makes a company operate. Talk to us about culture. You've got some strong opinions there, and I'm dying to hear them.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And just the platform to be able to talk about culture, because I think it is our opportunity as business people to really align other people into not only our journey and our vision, our inventions, our care for the world, our sacrifice, all those sort of pieces, but we were able to give back in ways that are pretty powerful to other people. But it's really important to understand those sort of cultural elements. And sometimes we have to make like really hard decisions in those culture pieces, right? And that could be laying people off that are good employees or top salespeople. But ultimately, what we're seeing in the workplace right now is just a lot of unhappiness. And this was part of the reason that I just had that heart. I just felt called to, again, launch a company like Jombine after, I left a great job, a great company that I loved. I felt supported. I was a company man for several years before Jombine. But it wasn't that I was unhappy. I just felt the need to really support so much pain. 81% of people, there's a statistic, 81% of people are unhappy in their job, right? Over half of those people would leave the job literally tomorrow with the right offer. To me, that just shows so much pain in the way that we hire. But I think like when we talk about culture, it really boils down to so much more than just like the elements, the feel, the vibe that we give in our workplace. And so often, like when I'm working with a client, when we talk about culture, and I want to be mindful and purposeful that culture can be bastardized, right? We talk a lot at Jombine about like, what is maybe a better word even than culture, because it's so much more encompassing. And I think that, we've used it as this like very touchy-feely thing. But what I look at culture is, what are like the true company values that are at play, right? What are the management styles? Right? Like one of my favorite examples that I use with clients is like, if you are one of the, I'll use a sports analogy here, the top passing quarterback, offensive scheme coaches, you're not bringing on and drafting, the best running quarterback. It won't fit the scheme. But so often we do that in the workplace, right? We may have a specific management style that, call it like data analytics, right? Like we love using data analytics and, KPIs and that sort of thing to track our efforts, right? Well, you could bring on the best salesperson in the world that has this amazing network and Rolodex and everything else. But if they don't align with doing well with KPIs and analytics, like there's going to be clashing there, right? And then what happens like to the rest of the team? What happens if this person is a top salesperson, but is not filling out the CRM every day, right? And is it going to clash with our departments and cross departments? Are you going to have younger people that are going to see that and be like, well, if the top salesperson's doing it, I'm not going to do it. Maybe your culture's like totally okay with that. Maybe it's this very individualistic culture and you can mine those sort of gaps. Or maybe it's like a team inclusive culture, and having everyone understanding of the right systems and programs is going to be really important. So it's not just understanding that like I like to manage through KPIs and data analytics. It's, well, how are we able to manage the team as a whole to really execute those sort of goals. So when we dig in with clients and just over the years and managing people, we get into the nitty gritty beyond so much deeper than just the work perks that we're given to our employees, right? It is truly like, what am I able to offer as a leader? What are my colleagues able to offer as leaders, and what is going to work best? Like, do I have the finances to be able to allow for X, Y, or Z? And so diving into all of those pieces, I mean, heck, the work environments, right? Do we want a culture that everyone is, on headphones, or do we want, high water cooler talk sort of culture? I mean, Brian, there are literally 50 plus elements that we could dig into when you think about culture. And that's part of the consulting that we love doing at Jombine. That, to me, that's our best partners, is when we get to consult with them. And it's top down. There's like overall company values, right? And then there's like the individual team values. And those could differ a lot. So it's really understanding those core pieces between really all parties, and then attacking the market to align people that are going to mesh best with those sort of cultural elements.
Yeah, it's really interesting hearing you talk about this, Topher, because I feel like when someone expects to hear, oh, someone who owns a recruiting business, you're going to talk about the elements of hiring, the elements of interviewing, the elements of finding the right talent to even talk to. But instead, what I keep hearing you say is words like team, environment, all of these things. And you're right. You make such really good points. I think the sports analogies really illustrate it for me, where not every, you take the wrong player and you put them in Bill Belichick's prime New England Patriots team, that is not going to be a good fit. And we saw when Tom Brady moved down here to Tampa Bay, is that he instead started operating under a head coach that says, hey, players first. This is not an authoritarian regime. You can do what you want. And it's an entirely different system that works or doesn't work depending on the players that are fitting into that, which, Topher, with an audience of wantrepreneurs and entrepreneurs all over the world, I can't help but think, well, do we just choose our culture? Like, where do we actually find that?
I don't think you find it. I think you create it, and you have to be really deliberate in that creation. I think that inherently there are going to be some pieces that are being created by the industry that you're in, and the dynamics of your products and what you're trying to do, right? I'll use my experience in owning a restaurant. We were a very foodie-based restaurant. We worked with farms all across Colorado and made everything from scratch, right? So that defined part of our culture too, of who we were, right? One of our clients is in an industry that is very like servant-minded, helping other people's and during really hard times, right? So inherently that's part of their culture. But other elements is you got to just be very deliberate in creating it and digging in deep and getting help with that, right? Partnering with the right sort of people. That could be your own team and from literally all levels, right? The mailroom to the CEO, just teaming up with the right people to really understand, well, how do we approach these sort of cultural elements? But you have to be deliberate in creating it. It is like building a house, right? You have to start with the foundation, and then you have to, even step back, right? You have to start with the blueprint, right? And architectural plans, and then build the foundation and start building walls and deciding where you want to put the windows and deciding, well, we've got beautiful, sunlight that could come in through this wall. So let's make sure we put windows there. It's no different than a company, right? It's how do you start building those sort of elements that are going to be impactful, so much more beyond the element of just selling a product. Zappos, I think, is a great example of this. And Tony Hsieh did such a good example. They weren't in the business of selling shoes. They really made this concerted effort of being in the business of customer service. And that's what they defined. They said, we could have all the shoes in the world. We could sell whatever we needed to, but we have to define our culture based on being service-minded to our e-commerce customers.
Yeah, Topher, I'll tell you what, my word of the year for 2024 is building. So I'm loving your analogies of building a house because I think that it's true of pretty much everything in life. Gosh, we're having a conversation about business today, but I think we can extrapolate it into everything. But I will be honest with you, it's actually not the analogy that I pictured when I was doing my research ahead of our conversation today. I saw somewhere where you described Jombine as a true matchmaking marketplace for our clients and candidates. And I was viewing so much of this through the lens of dating. Obviously, that matchmaking service. And for me, what's true in dating is, be you, be authentically you, show people your values, the big things that you believe in, the small things that you believe in, the pet peeves, because those things have to be aligned. Even if it's like an amazing person that checks all the boxes, but those things are off, it's not going to be a big fit or a good fit. And along those lines, Topher, when I think about dating, well, dating is a lower cost of entry because you can go on a few dates with somebody, you can quickly figure these things out. But when it comes to hiring, when it comes to growing a team, when it comes to business partners, when it comes to all of these, I think we kind of skip the dating phase and we go straight to marriage. How the heck do we gauge if these people are a good fit for all these things that you just shared with us without having that ability to date? Or is there a way to replicate the dating in the form of a combine or something like that? I'm dying to hear how you get on the insides of that.
Yeah, the dating and the marriage thing is so funny because another thing that we have to coach both our clients and our candidates on is like, you don't tell this person that you're smitten over that you love them on the first date, right? But we often see that happening in the workplace. Like we see candidates just gushing over the company without ever getting to know them. And I think that's part of the bad fit that happens in companies and part of what we're trying to break the mold of, right? And hiring in general is this very linear process. If I can give an analogy with this, to me, what I see current hiring happening is kind of like, imagine a train track. And on that train track, each job is a train on the train track. Well, in order to get on to that job train, right, for that particular company, you have to know what the train schedule is, where the train stations are, and you better be on time, right? If you're too early or too late, you're missing that train completely, right? And so at Jombine, we're really trying to look at, well, how do we reframe the idea of how we can play matchmaker, right? How we can, we're going to look at all the cultural elements. That's really, really important. And you can use some of the, haven't used a dating app, but like I believe the elements of a dating app of like, do you like long walks in the park? Well, I do too. We can do a lot of those elements in the way that we hire people through culture, right? Through those pieces that we talked about. But I think it's really important to have a mediator in that process and to support both the candidates and our clients. And that's what our agents are, right? That's what we believe what we do. That's such a huge part of our job. So yeah, we have this combine evaluation, but I think that instead of, and what we see in most recruiting is it's often very one-sided. It's a company or in-house recruiter, or it's even a recruiter working for a client saying, I'm going to go to the market. I'm going to find you that needle in the haystack or whatnot. And often we're just out there just trying to, judge people and like, all right, let's just disqualify everyone until we have one person that we can totally qualify, right? And I think there's just inherently a lot of mistakes that happen. Inherently, it's a hard process too. So we take a lot of bad shortcuts as well. And so the idea of, instead of being on that train track, it's like, how do we create an ecosystem, right? How do we create an environment where we're bringing both candidates into a program, we're bringing clients into a program? That, to me, that was the aha moment of the combine programs that the NFL, Major League Baseball, and soccer do. Is they don't expect athletes, in the NFL, they, for instance, they don't expect athletes to go to all 32 different cities, to be evaluated by 32 different general managers and scouts and coaches and everything else. They bring everybody into one centralized place in Indianapolis, and they bring all of the coaches, scouts, and evaluators into that environment to test on the same standardized metrics. And to me, that's such a powerful way of looking at a new way of trying to matchmake, right? Of trying to align people and companies is evaluating through those standardized metrics. And so for us, like if a client comes in, they get to see candidate A versus candidate B using the exact same metrics to evaluate them. And I just think there's a lot of efficacy that we're seeing happening there. It's creating more informed decisions, but it also is really allowing our candidates to have a deeper look at themselves and why they may or may not fit. But it's so funny because I do coach candidates on this as well. Like, I know you want this job. I know that's a big piece of it. But don't tell this company that you love them on the first date, because you shouldn't, right? You have to get to know them. So let's cut through a lot of that noise of just wanting to be chosen as people. Let's take our time. And so often we're coaching our candidates through the process. I mean, look, we get paid if they get hired, but I'm coaching them throughout this entire process. I mean, it's a lot of conversations, not just with our clients, with our candidates of what did you think about this? Do you feel like your skills align with that? We really dive in deep. It's part of our evaluation, but it's also hopefully setting our candidates up for success in the long haul.
Yeah, gosh, Topher, I'll tell you what, on your website, jombine.com, which listeners, we're going to drop that link again in just a second, but on your website, which is a beautiful website, by the way, your headline there is, let's start a hiring revolution. And hearing the way you talk about it here today, it really is a revolutionary way. This is a totally different way than I think we talk about hiring in the marketplace. For me as a business owner who's involved in quite a few businesses, who's constantly looking to hire people, this is a totally different way. And I love the fact that with regards to the matchmaking analogy in romantic terms, you talk about having that mediator. And I think about how many people, I work from coffee shops a lot. Topher, I eavesdrop on so many first dates. And I always look at, the guy and the girl, and I'm sitting there and I'm just like, oh gosh, they're not right for each other, but there's someone so perfect for each of these people. And it's true. And so what I'm hearing for you is that it's actually better for everybody, because it really is that. If you're sitting in a job interview and that company is not a good fit for you, you're a perfect fit for someone else, and they're a perfect fit for someone else. So let's, on a really macro level, make those right matches happen. So I absolutely love your approach to that. As we come towards the end, I knew we'd be running out of time here today, but I still want to squeeze a little bit of brilliance out of you. I want to hear your longer term thoughts, because you are not doing this for a short term, incremental improvement in the hiring sphere. You are trying to start a hiring revolution. What does that look like long term? Who are you out there to serve? And what's your plan for penetrating that market to actually make these changes happen?
I appreciate you letting me talk about the long-term vision, because, man, I came up with this idea in 2015. I have been stewing on this of how to make it impactful for the betterment of the workplace. And the vision long-term is, we believe agents being our backbone is a huge piece of that puzzle. We didn't want to create just another platform, another bloated SaaS software to sell to existing recruiting firms and to companies. We felt that the way to be able to penetrate that true change in the market, what we're doing now is just getting started, right? Is our current Jombine 1.0 iteration. What we see tomorrow and the next day and the next day, that is where we really believe that revolution is going to be able to come, and change is going to be able to come. And that'll be through our agent model. So we love using the idea of Remax. One, because Remax started in Colorado. Dave Linegar in the 70s, based in Colorado. He saw a lot of the same pains in the real estate market as we see today in the recruiting market. So we love using Remax to shout out another Colorado company. But the vision of having agents in very specific industry niches and job type niches is going to be huge. They're going to be subject matter. We already have it today with our current agent base is focused in certain industry niches and job role types, and building that from there. We see a future where we have tens of thousands of agents across the country supporting the entire job market. The beauty of that as well is, through our evaluation platform, we're able to give clients more opportunities to see a more diverse set of candidates that are already pre-evaluated. They're pre-vetted. We're essentially giving them an entire first, you could argue even a second round interview with all of the, we call it data, depth, and heart behind who a person is. But it's an economies of scale thing. We're just getting started now and we're building our agent base. That's part of what we see ourselves. We're not going to just be another agency where we have a bunch of recruiters working under us and just trying to incrementally grow. We truly see this almost as a model where agents are their own entrepreneurs. That's my daughter calling it out beautifully, right? I'm an entrepreneur helping other entrepreneurs, that being our agents. And that is going to be the future where they are their own business owners, but they have all the right tools, the support, the platform, the technology stack, the community. The agents that are most interested in Jombine right now, they're craving that community. They own maybe their own recruiting firm, but they're working by themselves. They need that support. They need that coaching, the accountability, the advocacy, right? So having all of those sort of frameworks to support our agents, in turn, we see as a huge boon for the hiring market to be able to tap into what we're doing with our evaluations. And heck, we're just getting started with our evaluation. We see a future where we're helping military veterans after being deployed and coming to the private space, having specialized combines that are geared towards supporting them and their special skills. We see a combine supporting moms where they might have a degree in something. They were in the workplace for 10, 20 years, and perhaps they took a break from the workplace to raise their kids. What a beautiful entrepreneurial journey that is, right? But now they're re-entering the workforce. It's so hard. We coach so many moms that are wanting to return in the workforce, but they struggle with the how behind it. So we see a future where we're able to create customized combines that are just for that sort of group. And really, again, we're always going to have a heart for hiring. That is part of our ethos. It's part of our culture. It's part of who we're looking for as other people that have a heart for hiring, for culture, for doing more with our workplace purpose. But it's going to take some time. It's going to take more crazy individuals joining the revolution as agents, as our clients, as our candidates. So I'm so excited to see where that goes. And I hope maybe, Brian, you and I can hop on in the years ahead and kind of see that arc and that journey come into fruition.
Heck yes. I'll tell you what, Topher, as a native New Englander, revolution is at the core of my DNA. And I see the vision of what you're doing. And I'm so excited to follow it along the years. And heck yeah, please involve me. I want to do all the things with what you're up to because I think that it's such a meaningful thing. And like I said, I genuinely think what makes your approach to this so different is that it's literally better for everybody. On the employer side, on the person who's applying for the job side, there's so much that makes this incredibly difficult. It is for sure still, 16 years into my entrepreneurial journey, I will very openly admit that this is the hardest thing to get right in our entrepreneurial careers, is building that right team, hiring the right talent. I've hired a lot of people over the past 16 years, and it's still something that I continue to learn to this day. And I still continue to pick the brains of incredible entrepreneurs like you, Topher, because I think it's so important. So yes, to all of that, I'm so excited. And you already know what my last question is going to be to you. I have no idea which direction you're going to take it because you have such a wealth of wisdom and a library of experiences to pull on. But with all the things that we've talked about here today and all the things that you've experienced in your own entrepreneurial journey, what's that takeaway? What's the one thing for all the entrepreneurs that are tuning in here today that you hope they walk away from today's session with?
Oh, I appreciate the chance to say that. I appreciate, and even before that takeaway, there's just gratitude, right? Gratitude for the journey. It's part of the takeaway is having that gratitude of being an entrepreneur. And Brian, I'm so thankful for you for having this environment, supporting entrepreneurs and people that are listening that get to be in an environment to learn and just become better. So it's truly a gratitude over everything, right? My purposeful journey, my wife, right? And I think all of our significant others that are a part of that. I mean, man, my wife pushes me in ways that not only have helped me grow, but I know are going to be life-defining in our legacy. Heck, my kids, I told you, my parents, they were both entrepreneurs. I mean, I don't know what I would do without that part of the DNA that I have, my past, my mentors, my advocates, my partners. Heck, all of those sort of things. But my biggest takeaway, Brian, and I'm excited to hopefully impart this, is just don't take shortcuts. You cannot take shortcuts on people, and to be very deliberate on that people part, right? There are ways of shortcutting our businesses through technology and efficiencies, and certainly AI and software and all those sort of pieces, but we can't take shortcuts on people. Does that mean that we shouldn't use really amazing technological advances like AI, like amazing ATS systems, the way that we ask questions? Absolutely. They need to be tools in the toolbox, though. We cannot sacrifice the time that we're willing to put in. Again, we're expecting people to work a third of their lives in our company, right? A third of our lives are going to be spent in the workplace. So don't take those shortcuts. Don't ask questions that are going to try to trick the candidate and might get you to, an answer that you think is perfect. Those shortcuts lead to those failures in the long run. So we have to be purposeful. We have to be purposeful in our process, and we need the right partners to do that, right? Maybe it is a rock star recruiter, right? And I'm not saying like a resume farmer or just like a sourcer, somebody that's willing to put the work into understanding you and your company and who you are and why that might, and what sort of candidates are going to really align best. Maybe it's someone that's in-house, that's solely focused on just trying to understand all these team dynamics and finding people. Or maybe it's a Jombine, right? But either way, don't take those shortcuts and expect healthy and successful and sustainable teams. So really, you got to build your recruiting systems and your recruiting partners around your true culture and defining what that is and all the elements that will make a difference in driving and sustaining your team for years ahead.
Yes, really wise words of advice there from you, Topher. I really appreciate you sharing all of those perspectives and insights for all of our listeners around the world. One of the earliest quotes that I can remember when I was a very young kid, I must have been 7 or 8 years old, and my mom bought me a quote book, and I used to walk around with this quote book, and people would always look at this weird kid just walking around with a quote book, and they would always say, like, read me a quote. Well, I couldn't even, list any of the quotes that were in there except for one, and it was the one that anytime people asked me for a quote, I always said, there are no shortcuts to any place worth going. So I think it's really wise words of advice from you here today, Topher, that goes so in depth into all the things that you've lived, that you've experienced, and that you're really starting that revolution around. So along those lines, I know that listeners are going to be super eager to check out more about Jombine and all the great things that you're up to. I've already teased your website, but drop those links on us. Where should listeners go from here?
That's great. Well, I appreciate that, Brian. Check us out, jombine.com, Jombine. I actually have a little gift for your listeners. So if they want to go to jombine.com/Wantrepreneur, we have a page just directed right for listeners. Please check me out on LinkedIn as well. Just search for Topher Deutschman. I'd love to connect. Client, candidate, anyone in the workspace. If you want to just chat, I'm here. I love conversations. I love meeting people and connecting.
Heck yeah, we so appreciate that, Topher. Listeners, we're dropping that special link for you down below in the show notes. You'll find the link to jombine.com as well as that super secret link just for all of us so generously from Topher. So definitely go check out jombine.com/Wantrepreneur. You'll find those links down below in the show notes as well as a link to Topher's personal LinkedIn if you want to connect with him. It's always amazing to have great entrepreneurs in your network. I cannot stress that enough. So Topher, on behalf of myself and all of our listeners around the world, thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Brian, it's a true pleasure. A lot of gratitude for you and your community. So thank you so much.